What's up, creeps? So with it being October and all, I'm going to break format a bit on this special Halloween theme episode of Corner Room Creep Show to talk about some of my favorite movies to watch during this most spooky month of the year. Halloween kicks ass, and we all know it. And if you don't like Halloween, kick rocks before I pelt you with some stale candy corn and shove a freshly carved jack-o'-lantern up your ass. For those staying, I'm going out on a limb and assuming we all got our Halloween favorites. I'm definitely one of those people who has a pretty solid stable of movies I refer to as October movies. Flicks that pretty much get watched exclusively during October. My staple movies I usually wait all year to watch and then look the most forward to in October. So grab a pumpkin to carve pour yourself some apple cider, dump a bowl of candy all over yourself, and wait for the great pumpkin with me as I run down my top 10 October movie selections. I'm Mr. Samhain, and this is Corner Room Creep Show. A literal shitload of movies in general, but in October I really turn up on some classics that I just gotta have for the Halloween season. Ones I've always been watching since I was a kid, the standbys that I always reach for when October rolls around. They gotta help evoke that seasonal spirit of fall, trick-or-treating, or just horror, spooks, monsters, and gore. And I'll preface this by saying also, as a guy who's born in the 80s and grew up through the 90s, this is pretty heavy on 80s movies. We all love the 80s, but I try to throw in some new stuff here and there. So anyway, I'm going to run down my honorable mentions. The movies that didn't quite make the top 10, because you can't have a top 10 list without having some movies outside of the main list. I'm not saying these are bad or that even some of the movies that made the top 10 are better than these. The following 5 movies are just a little bit less essential to my Halloween spirit if I simply couldn't watch them in October over my top 10 list, though. That's all. So without further ado, at 15, I got a Godzilla movie. Godzilla is an essential Halloween viewing, and I'd be willing to agree with anyone who said Godzilla isn't Halloween at all, especially after the first few movies where he was clearly the bad guy. But I usually throw a Godzilla movie on because A, I like them, and B, monster movies can always be Halloween, even if it's a giant nuclear monster from Japan that stomps on cities or saves them from other monsters. Kaiju. Godzilla just simply rules. At 14, I got a metal horror movie. Now, this was a hard one for me because I always watch one, usually Trick or Treat, where a recently deceased rock legend does electric ghost speaker jumping and blasting kids with lightning bolts from his guitar in the Halloween dance finale, or Rocktober Blood, where a dead rocker comes back from the grave with a message from hell to torture his ex-girlfriend and kill cast members because you can't get a restraining order against a dead guy. Metal horror is a sweet spot of mine, so one of these is usually on the list. At 12, I got Vincent Price movies. Now, I rotate these ones yearly because he did a bunch, and I can't just watch House on Haunted Hill every time when he usually chews up the scenes in all his movies. Vincent Price was a master, and his work spanned a few decades that were heavy on horror. Aside from House on Haunted Hill, I usually watch The Last Man on Earth or The Pit and the Pendulum. Price and Roger Corman were a great match for their post-cycle. At 11, and this one was the hardest to have outside of my top 10, and I watch one of them every year without fail, is either Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2. And who doesn't love those? I'm only a big fan of those two. I'm not big on Army of Darkness, as the tone is a little too silly. Evil Dead 2, though, is the perfect balance of the series beginning and then the series as it is now. Sam Raimi, Tom Sullivan, Bruce Campbell's indie horror splatter classic is one that is just outside the American mainstream, but I get my soul swallowed by it every October. Okay, now we're going to hit the top 10. Some may scoff at this, but when you've been watching a movie every Halloween for about 29 years, it should make your top 10. And that's why at number 10 I have Ernest Scared Stupid. Is it a good movie? No. Is it a bad movie? According to me, and about 6 or 7 years old for the last 29 years, no, it isn't. I know it's not a good movie, and that Ernest is a big niche, like, kind of audience. But Ernest Scared Stupid is a silly movie that's a lot of fun, especially if you grew up with it. Ernest Saves Christmas gets watched every December, but Ernest Scared Stupid is the best Ernest movie, where he's the local garbage man and has to help the local kids who are friends with defeat bullies and an oversized troll that he unleashes after a curse was put on his family, because that's just what Ernest does, just fuck things up. He's a bumbling idiot with a heart of gold and a barrage of personalities he plays up for comedy filler, especially in a couple of the movie's best sequences. So grab you a tall glass of Miak and get to the high ground. At number 8 is a Freddy Krueger. So I usually watch Dream Warriors or The First Nightmare on Elm Street, but sometimes I go with others. Last year I watched Freddy's Dead, which is the worst one, but also has some of the funnest kills. So how much you like Silly Freddy will probably determine how much you like the sequels after Dream Warriors. Wes Craven's Dream Killer became a slasher icon, a pop culture figure in the 80s, and I can't escape him in October. At number 8, I got another slasher, the icon of all slashers, Jason Voorhees. Friday the 13th movies were some of my earliest exposure to horror as a little kid, with AMC marathons and the legendary Monster Vision Dusk to Dawn marathon with Joe Bob Briggs, a personal hero and influence of mine. So no October is complete without at least a couple of these. Usually there's a Friday the 13th night in October. I'm big on 1 through 6, more heavily watching 3 through 6 though, because that's my favorite stretch in the series. Jason blows through teens' leg, nothing, leaving blood, parts, and bodies everywhere across the Camp Crystal Lake area. Plus, Jason leans heavily on those slasher tropes. You fuck, you get high, you die. At 7 is Sir Christopher Lee's Dracula Hammer movies. The man was a true badass and a commanding screen presence, and his career was wide and deep. Christopher Lee made an insane amount of movies, could apparently still recall intricate behind-the-scenes details of them all. He was a fucking British war hero and played tons of awesome parts, including Saruman in the Lord of the Rings movies, and my October favorite, Count Dracula, in a series of movies for Hammer. He is my favorite Dracula, sorry Lugosi, and those Hammer movies are atmospheric as fuck. I rotate these regularly, but usually come back to Dracula's Risen from the Grave, where the Count tells his current bitch to go fetch him a new bitch, and then she gets bitch slapped for stepping out of line by thinking she was the number one. What do you want her for? You've got me. Bring her to me. Best scene. Sir Christopher Lee always looked powerful and dangerous as a Count, and that's why he's my number one Dracula. So there's one movie that I usually have as my lead-off hitter for October, and that's my number 6, Stuart Gordon's classic Reanimator. I love some Reanimator, a tale as old as time of the detached boy wonder scientist who's invented a serum that reanimates the dead and turns them into frothing murder machines. Starring Jeffrey Combs, who chews every moment of his scene as Herbert West. We also have him facing off against David Gale, who's the lesser senior doctor who West kills, but still manages to be a fucking headless corpse by the end of the movie. The ending is insane, and everyone here does a great job thanks to a solid script, and everyone being trained actors playing this all straight. Reanimator is another splatterfest that should be enjoyed by all during the Halloween season.
Listen up! My destination was the Haunted Hoochie, 5 miles east of Columbus on Broad Street. My mission was to complete the Haunted Hoochie, but my objective quickly became to survive.
I can't get away from it. I'm hearing voices in my head. I can't take it anymore.
We blow the competition away.
Now remember, that's the Haunted Hoochie, 5 miles east of Columbus on Broad Street. The Haunted Hoochie, 5 miles east of Columbus on Broad Street. Follow the signs! We'll see you there!
Viewer discretion advised.
Okay, now we've reached into my top 5 where the list is eminently more essential viewing. And these movies I almost never watch outside of October, and I usually watch these much closer to Halloween itself. My final homestretch movies. So at number 5, I got the George Romero classic, Night of the Living Dead. The opinion on the first 3 Romero zombie movies is varied, with everyone being a camp of either night, dawn, or day. I'm pretty firmly in the night camp, as it's the classic, and I have been watching it for a really long time thanks to being in public domain. The black and white, the classic score, the introduction of the reanimated dead to our society psyche, the struggle between the survivors, and the ultimately downer ending of it. Night of the Living Dead holds a special place in my heart as a horror classic that it is, and I always look forward to watching it every October. And number 4 is probably my all-time favorite kid movie, especially for Halloween, and that's Monster Squad. I love this movie from the first frame to its last. It perfectly summarizes growing up loving monsters and being a kid. I didn't grow up as a kid all the way through the 80s, but I got a taste, and the 90s was really just an extension of the 80s anyway. The Universal monsters are sucked into the real world, and Dracula needs an amulet to rule the world, and the only thing standing between him and it are a group of kids, the Monster Squad. Led by Andre Gower, who unfortunately didn't get much work outside of 80s TV as a child star. The movie is highly quotable, and it also has some great jokes for adults, as all kids' movies should. It's also the only movie that makes me cry every damn time at the end when little Phoebe has to say goodbye to Frankenstein's monster. And there's no shame here for that. Plus, my daughter loves this one too, so you know it's a good one when it can span generations and still connect well. May Fred Decker and Shane Black's classic never get remade. Okay, we're winding down now into my hard to choose one, because these last 3 usually go on October 30th to 31st. And number 3 is Halloween 3. This often maligned entry in the Halloween series has had a resurgence over the years, in part to the fact some flicks honestly deserve a reevaluation. And then also merchandisers putting out some pretty eye-catching products. Depends on how you look at it. Things, I guess. I hated this one as a kid because it didn't have Michael Myers in it. If you're watching a Halloween movie, it should have Michael Myers in it. This one does, but only in a couple of scenes on the TV. But instead, we got Tom fucking Atkins as the star, and he's trying to solve a mystery of why his patient is killed, and the killer dumps gasoline on himself and blows his car up. This leads him to Santa Mira and the Silver Shamrock Factory, where masks are being manufactured to kill kids who wear them on Halloween when they watch a catchy yet annoying commercial. The magic pumpkin in the commercial will turn their heads into a mess of bugs and snakes and goo, which is fucking awesome. If you still don't like this movie, slap yourself, throw yourself down the stairs to block the door that Tom Atkins is going to come through to fuck your mother. Halloween 3 rules, and I wish we would have gotten what John Carpenter intended the Halloween series to be. Anthology stories, every Halloween in a new movie. But no, Hollywood loves sequels, and the public want Michael Myers back, so we just got shitty sequels instead that pretty much, I feel like, got worse every time. Plus, the masks in the following sequels were usually dog shit. And number 2 is surprisingly not too new, but I believe is a true classic. I love anthology horror and watch a few every October because they're great for the season. Whether it's Creepshow, Tales from the Dark Side of the Movie, or another new favorite like The Witching Season or Tales of Halloween, the Mac Daddy, I think, is now Michael Dougherty's Trick or Treat, which is 13 years old. Has it really been that long now? Damn. What's great about Trick or Treat is everything. The stories are interwoven, which is sweet, and they're all good. And they all deliver like a message. So whether it's checking your candy, werewolves, things not being what they seem, killing special needs kids, and it becoming a ghost story. And then there's Sam, our connection to it all, and the cute yet deadly enforcer of the rules of Halloween. Trick or Treat was a movie that immediately hooked me on first viewing, and I knew this was absolutely a new classic we had on our hands. Man, has it really been 13 years? So yeah, at number 2, Trick or Treat. And then that leads us to my number 1, can't live without it, Halloween movie, which of course is John Carpenter's seasonal slasher classic, Halloween. Who cares if he was just given the idea by a studio to write a movie about a killer and babysitter murder? John Carpenter made movies because he wanted to, and movies because he just needed to work. And some of those ones still kicked ass, like Christine. But Halloween was the movie that put John Carpenter on the map. It was a classic then and a classic now. I was never a Michael Myers guy because I think of all the slashers, Michael Myers was the worst one. I love Halloween too, also, especially Donald Pleasance running around telling everyone how many times he shot Michael Myers. But all the other sequels featuring Michael Myers sucked. Give me Freddy and Jason sequels all day, but I pass on Halloween 4 and beyond almost every single time. I don't even own them, but the original Halloween is still wonderfully shot, lit, scored, and acted. It's slow compared to the body stacking that went on after it, but that's what you get when everyone watches this and decides they want to do their own and usually falls short of the master. Michael Myers isn't even my favorite slasher, but Jason and Freddy have to bow down to the OG, because if it wasn't for Halloween, we wouldn't have had them in the first place. The Halloween spirit that Halloween evokes is also great. That ball feel is there, and Dr. Loomis helps give us a tour of Haddonfield on Halloween night. That's a big part of my list. Movies that give me the Halloween spirit just by watching them. Whether it's monsters, the splatter, but most importantly, the feeling of fall, the chills, the thrills of trick-or-treating, and the classics that bring out the spirit of Halloween. John Carpenter's classic embodies that as the story revolves around Michael Myers coming home on Halloween night to kill again, and has Jamie Lee Curtis and her circle of people in his sights for the evening, with only Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis to try and help stop him. 1978's Halloween still stands high on the slasher mountain, and also on this list. Well, I hope that some of you enjoy watching me blab on about movies that aren't too indie, though some started off low budget and indie, like Evil Dead, and then became classics. But it's movies like these that got me into horror, kept me in it, and ultimately helped lead me to watching more movies, because you shouldn't just watch Halloween on repeat. Which is why so many of these movies only get watched by me in October, because I spend the rest of the year digging through not only new movies, but through the depths of the barrel for shot-on-video trash and even other genres altogether. I got kung fu and, blaxploitation, action movies. There's all types of movies to watch. So watch some classics this October, but also add some new ones, new or old new ones, to your month of horror viewing. You may find some ones that you like, and maybe you add it on to the next year for your October list. So as always, I'm Mr. Samhain for Corner Room Creepshow saying, watch something new for a change, and I'll see you next time. And happy Halloween.